Income tax 2020. Residential energy property credit. Come in, relax with income tax 2020. Residential energy property credit. When thinking about the income tax equation, we're going to be on the bottom in the credits and payments section, remembering that we can break our income tax equation into two halves. The first half, in essence, a modified income statement. The second half, then, the calculation of the tax, and then application of payments and credits to get to the bottom line, that of the tax refund or the amount due. We're going to be focusing in on the credits area, remembering that we can compare and contrast credits with deductions. The credits, if we have $1 of credit versus $1 of deduction, being bigger, being better to have the credit than the deduction, because if we have a dollar's worth of deduction, whether it be an above the line deduction or below the line deduction, we're going to get a benefit that will be related to the tax rates, as opposed to if we have a dollar of a credit down below that we're receiving, it's basically equivalent to a dollar that had been paid in terms of payments, and that's why it's going to be down here on the bottom half of the equation. Here we have our second page of the 1040. We're concentrating here on line 20. This is coming from the Schedule 3, so this is the second page of the 1040. We'll take a look at this in more detail in a following presentation when we work through the problem in actual forms and with the use of tax software. But just to get an idea of where it's located here, second page 1040, line 20, that's coming then from Schedule 3. And that's coming from line 5, the residential energy credits. And that then, this 1040, is coming from the form 5695. 5695 form looks like this. Again, we won't go into it in detail. We'll go through it in more detail in the following presentation. But this is going to be form 5695, the residential energy credit. And this is the first half of it. Then the second half is here down below. So now we'll get into the overview of it, and we'll then go into the jumping in for the actual data input more in the following presentation. So are there incentives for making your home energy efficient by installing alternative energy equipment? So this is often going to be a concern. You might have questions about this, and if you're talking to people about, energy efficient type of equipment, they're surely going to mention this as a benefit, as basically a sales point. So that means that you're often going to get questions related to this particular credit, possibly with relation to different types of things that people are asking about or looking into. So answer yes, the residential energy efficient property credit allows for a credit equal to the applicable percent of the cost of qualified property. So we have the qualified property that we're going to be dealing with, and then see how much of the amount of the credit might be deductible then. Qualifying property are solar electric property, solar water heaters, geothermal heat pumps, small wind turbines, and fuel cell property. So the most experience, for me at least, that I have seen, of course, with this type of information for normal people would be the solar stuff. Solar electric property, solar water heaters are some of the more common kind of items in my experience, at least. So only fuel cell property is subject to a limitation, which is $500 with respect to each half kilowatt of capacity of the qualified fuel cell property. Generally, this credit for alternative energy equipment terminates for property placed in service after December 31st, 2021. So that one's going to be going away possibly, unless there's some kind of change in 2021. That the applicable percentages are, in the case of property placed in service after December 31st, 2016 and before January 1st, 2020. And just note as we go through this, obviously this is something that legislatively has been put in the past, and then it's got to be updated. So then it's going to be updated and carried forward and so forth and so forth. So the law can be a little bit kind of confusing because of that, because you can have changes and updates. It's going to terminate, but they kept it going, and then you have a bit of a change in the law as it keeps going from year to year. So again, in the case of property placed in service after December 31st, 2016 and before January 1st, 2020, 30%. In the case of property placed in service after December 31st, 2019 and before January 1st, 2021, 26%. In the case of property placed in service after December 31st, 2020 and before January 1st, 2022, we have the 22%. So is a roof eligible for the residential energy efficient property tax credit? So we have the roof on there, and you say, hey, the roof, kind of keeps in a lot of energy. So if we had like a good roof, then you would think it would be like energy saving thing. We'd be saving the world and the environment, so we should get like a credit for it, right? So in general, traditional roofing materials and structural components do not qualify for the credit. So if you just put like a standard general roof on there, they're saying that wouldn't be it, even though it is insulating the house and therefore probably a good thing, saving energy. So, however, some solar roofing tiles and solar roofing shingles serve as solar electric collectors while also performing the function of traditional roofing, serving both the functions of solar electric generation and structural support, and such items may qualify for the credit. So now we've got the solar component in there, so just keep it in the heat, not letting the heat out. That's not enough. That's not enough to save the world. We got to have the solar energy in there, and then, it might be something that would qualify. Components such as the roof's decking or rafters that serve only a roofing or structural function do not qualify for the credit. So just keeping the roof up, apparently, is not important enough for the credit. So what improvements qualify for the residential energy property credit for homeowners? So we have the improvements, and again, this is where a lot of the questions come into play, because then people are obviously going to want to improve the house, and then if they can get credit for it, they would like to. People that sell improvements then of course are going to be mentioning credits when they might apply. Again, often a time when you might have questions about them. In 2018, 19, and 20, an individual may claim a credit for 1, 10% of the cost of qualified energy efficiency improvements, and 2, the amount of the residential energy property expenditures paid or incurred by the taxpayer during the taxable year, subject to the overall credit limit of $500. So we got the $500 limitation there. Qualified energy efficiency improvements include the following qualifying products. We have the energy efficient exterior windows, doors, and skylights. So now we're talking about those things that do, their primary function is not, generation of energy like solar panels and wind turbines or something like that, but rather just to simply keep the energy in, which you would think would be quite important to save on energy. And so we're talking about things like windows that are designed to be more efficient keeping the energy in, and doors and skylights and so on. Roofs, metal and asphalt, and roof products. So if we're talking about, now we do have the roofs here for metal and asphalt and roof products, and insulation. And then we have insulation may qualify as well. So then we have the residential energy property expenditures include the following qualifying products. That would be the energy efficient heating and air conditioning systems, water heaters, natural gas, propane or oil, and then the biomass stoves. Who qualifies to claim a residential energy property credits, and are there limitations? You may be able to take these credits if you make energy saving improvements to your principal residence during the taxable year. So your principal residence in 2018, 19, and 20, the residential energy property credit is limited to an overall lifetime credit limit of $500, $200 lifetime limit for Windows. So if that specific rule for Windows at the 200, there are also other individual credit limitations. So we have a $50 for any advanced main air circulating fan, $150 for any qualified natural gas, propane, or oil furnace or hot water boiler, $300 for any item of energy efficient building property. So these different caps and different limits and the dollar amounts can be a little bit confusing, because once again they've been kind of updating and adjusting these laws as they go. So software can be useful within these kind of applications, because they can, of course, hopefully help you to determine what those limits are and what the eligibility will be, possibly through, say, an interview type of process that you might see in something like an H&R Block software, or something like a TurboTax type of software. And then, of course, the calculation of the credit should be a little bit easier to do with the use of software. But obviously, if you're doing tax preparation, you might have questions about some of these individual items, and because these items are unique, each of them could be different. You might then have to start at that item and then do some research, and possibly then use the software to do projections to get an idea about a specific thing that someone has a question about with regards to this credit.